Millions know him as Sheldon Cooper, the brilliant, awkward genius who ruled Thursday nights. Off-screen, Jim Parsons has been living an even more extraordinary story. One of risk, reinvention, and a truth that continues to inspire millions. From a Texas kid staging plays in his living room to the highest-paid actor on television, this is the side of Jim Parsons you've never seen. To understand the man he became, we have to start where it all began. Let's step back in time for a moment. Houston, Texas, June 24th, 1973. It's summer in the South, which means it's hot, humid, and your shirt sticks to you the second you step outside. In the middle of all that heat, a baby named James Joseph Parsons enters the world. His father, Milton, worked in the plumbing business, the kind of job where you actually fix things with your own two hands. His mother, Judy, was a school teacher, which meant the house was filled with books, learning, and a certain discipline that comes from growing up with a teacher for a mom. That mix, practical from his dad, academic from his mom, shaped Jim into someone grounded but curious, serious when it mattered, but also open to exploring new things. In late 70s Texas, the path for boys often pointed toward sports, especially football. But Jim wasn't heading for the football field. He had a stage of his own, the living room. And his productions? They weren't small. Whoever was in the house became part of the cast. Siblings, cousins, even the family dog if it would sit still long enough. Neighbors probably thought, that Parsons kid, he's always putting on a show. And they were right. Houston in those years had a modest but lively community theater scene, and for Jim, it was like a magnet. He didn't just sit in the audience, he stepped on stage. The moment the lights came up, he felt at home. It didn't matter if the set was made from painted cardboard or if only a handful of people showed up. Jim gave it everything. That early taste of performing planted a seed that would guide the rest of his life. By the time college came around, there was no debate about his major. He enrolled at the University of Houston to study drama. Now, a lot of students show up, do their part, and head home. Jim was different. He approached every rehearsal like it was opening night. He studied scripts in detail, worked scenes over and over, and paid close attention to how each line could land better. Friends and classmates noticed. He wasn't just passionate, he was methodical. During his time there, he took part in countless productions. Theaters on campus, small independent plays in the city. If there was a stage, Jim wanted to be on it. This was also when he began to refine what would later become one of his greatest strengths, timing. That sharp comedic instinct didn't come out of nowhere. It was built show after show, line after line. After earning his undergraduate degree, Jim decided to push further. He was accepted into a highly selective 2-year graduate program at the University of San Diego, partnered with the Old Globe Theater. This was not a casual, learn a few acting tips setup. It was immersive, demanding, and relentless. Students performed in classical plays, trained in voice, movement, and text, and received constant critiques from seasoned professionals. Many couldn't handle the pressure. Jim didn't just handle it, he thrived. When he graduated, Jim carried with him not just a degree but a toolkit, skills sharpened, a strong work ethic, and an understanding of how much discipline it would take to survive in the industry. And survival was exactly the next challenge. Those first years in the professional world were far from glamorous. He lived in small apartments, often in neighborhoods where you heard your neighbor's music whether you wanted to or not. He auditioned for commercials, minor TV spots, and local productions. Many auditions ended the same way. We'll be in touch. And anyone who's been in the business knows that's usually the end of the conversation. But Jim kept going. He treated each rejection as part of the process, each small role as a chance to learn. He understood something crucial. This career isn't about instant success. It's about persistence. Every callback, every short scene, every project that barely paid the rent, it was all building toward something bigger. He didn't know when or how it would happen, but he was ready. And that readiness would matter, because the opportunity that would change his life forever was about to appear. And then, it happened. It's 2006. Jim's been grinding away at auditions, taking whatever roles come his way, and then out of nowhere, his agent calls. There's this new sitcom in the works, a little show about a group of scientists, their awkward adventures, and well, a lot of comic books and Chinese takeout. The role they want him to read for? Sheldon Cooper. Now, Sheldon on paper was intense. The character breakdown probably scared off more than a few actors. Brilliant theoretical physicist, 2 PhDs, genius-level IQ, zero social awareness, obsessed with rules, routines, and a very specific spot on the couch. I mean, come on. How do you make that guy funny and likable at the same time? Jim walked into the audition room with his usual calm, but also that quiet spark of, I know what I'm about to do. He picks up the script, starts reading, and this is from the casting team's own words, it was like Sheldon Cooper just walked in off the street. The cadence, the rhythm, the subtle shifts in tone. They weren't acting choices you could fake. They came from understanding exactly why Sheldon would say each line the way he did. And here's where Jim's theater training kicked in. He didn't just memorize the words, he dissected them. Every pause had a purpose. Every glance had a reason. Even the way Sheldon held his hands, fingers slightly tense, almost like the world was just a bit too unpredictable for comfort. That was a deliberate choice. Jim has said that he approached Sheldon like playing an instrument. Think about that. Every note was a word, every rest was a pause, and every crescendo was one of Sheldon's wonderfully over-the-top rants about, say, why the roommate agreement must be followed to the letter. And the best part? He made it feel effortless. When The Big Bang Theory premiered in 2007, the first season found its footing quickly. But by season 2, it exploded. And Sheldon, he was the breakout star. Fans quoted his lines, debated the science references, and yes, people started arguing over which spot on their own couches was theirs. Come on, admit it. If you've ever told someone to move because they were in your spot, you're basically living your inner Sheldon. What made Jim's Sheldon so special wasn't just the humor, it was the humanity underneath. Sure, he could be frustrating, even infuriating to his friends on the show, but Jim made sure you saw the vulnerability too. That little flicker in the eyes when Sheldon didn't quite understand why people were upset. The brief hesitation before delivering an apology in his own awkward way. Those were the moments that turned him from a caricature into a character you loved. Behind the scenes, Jim worked like a scientist running an experiment. He marked up scripts, tested different inflections, even researched some of the scientific concepts to make sure the delivery sounded authentic. And because he's Jim Parsons, he did it without ego. Always open to ideas from the writers, the director, even his co-stars. The recognition followed quickly. 4 Primetime Emmy Awards for Outstanding Lead Actor in a Comedy Series in 2009, 2010, 2011, and again in 2014, plus a Golden Globe in 2011. That kind of winning streak is rare, and it wasn't just because Sheldon was a great character. It was because Jim made him unforgettable. And let's not forget the ripple effect. Sheldon became part of pop culture. Bazinga showed up on t-shirts, coffee mugs, Halloween costumes. Fans around the world, from teenagers to grandparents, found something relatable in this quirky genius who refused to compromise who he was. Jim once joked in an interview that he never imagined playing a man obsessed with trains and comic books would make him a household name. But he also admitted it was one of the most rewarding challenges of his career. Because Sheldon, for all his quirks, was a reminder that different doesn't mean less. By the time The Big Bang Theory wrapped in 2019, Jim had spent 12 years bringing Sheldon to life. That's over 270 episodes of keeping a character consistent yet evolving week after week. And here's the thing. He never phoned it in. Every take mattered. Every laugh mattered. And that's why, even now, years later, you can watch any random episode and still feel like Sheldon Cooper is right there in the room with you. And while the cameras captured every move Sheldon made on screen, in real life, Jim Parsons was quietly living a story of his own. One that, in 2012, would go public in the most Jim Parsons way possible. Calm, understated, and completely authentic. He was doing an interview with the New York Times. Now, if you've ever read one of their profiles, you know they don't just stick to the work. They go deeper. They talk about who you are, what shapes you. And in this conversation, somewhere between talking about theater and career, Jim mentioned, almost casually, that he was in a relationship with a man. That was it. No breaking news segment, no confetti cannons, no long Instagram letter in a fancy font, just one honest sentence dropped right in the middle of a thoughtful discussion. And in that moment, Jim Parsons had officially publicly come out as gay. The thing is, it didn't feel like a big reveal, because for Jim, it wasn't. He wasn't hiding, and he didn't see it as a shocking announcement. It was simply the truth, shared naturally when it came up. And that's part of why it resonated so much. Fans didn't feel like they were being sold a story, they felt like they were being trusted with a fact. So of course, the next natural question was, who's the lucky guy? That would be Todd Spiewak, an art director Jim had met way back in 2002, long before The Big Bang Theory and all the Emmy wins. In fact, Jim has said more than once that meeting Todd was the best thing that ever happened to him. And if you've ever seen them together in interviews or on the red carpet, you get it. They have that easy, quiet chemistry of two people who've truly built a life together. Here's the part I love. When Jim talks about Todd, he never does it like a celebrity giving sound bites. It's not "my partner and I" in some polished PR-proof sentence. It's little things, how they share the same taste in art, how Todd's humor keeps him grounded, or how Todd's the first person he calls after a great day on set. It's real, and people can tell. The public reaction? Overwhelmingly positive. Fans around the world sent messages of support. Media coverage was warm, focusing on how Jim's openness could help others feel less alone. And in a world where coming out can still be a complicated, even dangerous decision, here was a beloved TV star showing that living authentically doesn't have to mean losing everything. It can mean gaining even more. Fast forward to 2017, 15 years after they first met, and Jim and Todd decided it was time to make it official. The wedding was held in New York City. It wasn't some massive Hollywood spectacle with helicopters overhead. It was intimate, elegant, and full of laughter. Jim wore a classic black suit. Todd looked equally sharp, and the smiles in those wedding photos, you can't fake that kind of joy. Guests later described it as one of the warmest, happiest events they'd ever attended. And you better believe the photos went everywhere. Magazines, fan pages, social media. But what stood out most wasn't the celebrity angle. It was the image of two people who'd spent over a decade together, choosing to take that next step, surrounded by people who loved them. Since then, Jim and Todd have continued to live their life much the same way they always have. Low-key, steady, but openly and unapologetically together. They attend events side by side, they support each other's projects, and they've become a quiet but powerful example of what a long-term committed relationship can look like in an industry that's not exactly famous for stability. And if you're wondering how Jim feels about the whole coming out label, he's been pretty clear. In interviews, he said that while he understands why people see it as a big deal, for him it was just a natural extension of being himself. No performance, no strategy, just truth. That's part of why his story matters, because for every person watching The Big Bang Theory who might be struggling with their own identity, seeing Jim live his truth, successfully, happily, and without apology, can be a lifeline. Representation isn't just about characters on a screen. It's about the people behind them showing the world that who you are is not something to hide. And honestly, in the same way Sheldon made millions of people feel okay about being different, Jim Parsons, just by being himself, has made countless people feel okay about being themselves. That's a kind of impact you can't measure in ratings or awards. Now here's something a lot of people don't realize. Jim Parsons didn't just stop making an impact when the cameras stopped rolling on The Big Bang Theory. Sure, Sheldon Cooper lives on in reruns and streaming, but off-screen? Jim has been quietly, but consistently, using his voice, his influence, and yes, even his Sheldon fame, to shine a light on causes that matter to him. And no surprise here, many of those causes are close to the heart of the LGBTQ community. Let's start with the basics. Jim has lent his time, his energy, and his name to organizations like the Trevor Project, GLAAD, and Broadway Cares/Equity Fights AIDS. Now you might be thinking, okay, but don't a lot of celebrities do that? Sure, they might post about it once or show up for a photo op, but Jim actually shows up. He attends events, he speaks at benefits, he participates in fundraisers. There's a difference between being a name on a donor list and being physically present, talking to people, shaking hands, listening to stories. Jim's the latter. And sometimes he gets creative about it. There have been auctions where fans could bid on signed Big Bang Theory memorabilia, scripts, props, even wardrobe pieces. Imagine hanging Sheldon's actual Flash t-shirt in your living room. Not only would it be a conversation starter, but you'd know the money went to a cause Jim personally supports. Here's the thing. I think people respond to him because he's not trying to be the loudest voice in the room. When Jim talks about something, it's not, hey, look at me, I'm saving the world. It's here's something important and here's why it matters. That subtlety is refreshing in a world where celebrity activism can sometimes feel, let's just say, a little too polished. Of course, Jim's activism isn't just about turning up at events. Sometimes it's about the roles he chooses as an actor. Let's talk about The Normal Heart in 2014. If you've never seen it, put it on your watch list. It's an HBO film based on Larry Kramer's groundbreaking play about the early days of the AIDS crisis in New York. Jim played Tommy Boatwright, a role he had already tackled on Broadway. It wasn't glamorous, it was raw, emotional, and deeply tied to real-life history. Watching him in that role, you could tell it mattered to him. Critics praised the performance, but more importantly, the film itself reignited conversations about that period in history. Conversations that still need to happen. Then there's The Boys in the Band in 2018. This wasn't just another acting gig. The original 1968 play was revolutionary. It portrayed the lives of gay men at a time when mainstream America didn't want to see them. For the Broadway revival and the later Netflix adaptation, the entire cast was openly gay, including Jim. That decision alone sent a message about representation, but the production went further. It showed that stories about LGBTQ+ characters could be complex, layered, and compelling without leaning on stereotypes. And it's not always about heavy, serious topics. Sometimes Jim's influence shows up in small, joyful moments. Maybe it's him being openly affectionate with Todd at a red carpet event. Maybe it's a lighthearted but pointed comment in an interview when a journalist asks about equal rights. These aren't headline-grabbing gestures, but for people watching who rarely see same-sex couples represented naturally in mainstream media, those moments can be powerful. Here's where I'll ask you something. When was the last time you saw a celebrity couple at an event just being themselves, without the PR gloss? For Jim and Todd, it's second nature. And seeing that normalcy, that comfort, can mean more than any speech or campaign. If you've watched Jim in interviews, you'll know he's not one for long, fiery political monologues. But he will talk, often and sincerely, about fairness, kindness, and treating people with respect. And sometimes that's the message that sticks the most. It's simple, it's human, and it's harder to argue with than a long lecture. And let's not forget, Jim's career choices keep reinforcing that same message. From comedic roles that celebrate individuality to dramatic projects that explore identity and history, he's built a body of work that says, it's okay to be exactly who you are. That's not an accident, that's intentional. Now think about it. How many actors have you seen go from being the face of one of the biggest sitcoms in the world to actively choosing work that might not have the same paycheck, but has a bigger impact? That's what makes Jim stand out. By being himself, on stage, on screen, and in life, Jim Parsons has shown that influence isn't just about what you say, it's about how you live. And that same thoughtful, intentional approach, well, it's exactly what he carried into the next phase of his career, one that might just surprise you. Because here's the thing. When you've spent 12 years as one of the most recognizable characters on TV, you have two choices. One, you can ride that wave forever, cash in on the same type of roles, play it safe. Or two, You can step off the surfboard entirely and see what else is out there. And Jim? He chose option 2. Now don't get me wrong, he could have easily coasted on Sheldon Cooper for the rest of his career. The offers were there. Commercials, guest spots, even Sheldon-like roles in other sitcoms. But Jim's the kind of actor who gets itchy if he's not learning something new. So instead of just chasing another sitcom, he started looking for projects that challenged him. Even if that meant a smaller paycheck, a tougher production schedule, or a role that made audiences go, "Wait, that's Jim Parsons." One of the first big moves he made was in 2020 with Hollywood, Ryan Murphy's bold, glitzy, and sometimes scandalous Netflix series. Jim played Henry Wilson, a real-life talent agent from Hollywood's golden age, a man who was as infamous for his questionable ethics as he was for discovering stars. And let's just say, Henry Wilson was no Sheldon Cooper. This was a morally messy character, ambitious, manipulative, sometimes downright unlikable. Jim dove into the role headfirst, studying Wilson's real-life history, his mannerisms, his voice. The transformation was so complete that some viewers didn't even realize it was Jim until they saw his name in the credits. Critics loved it, praising his ability to vanish into the character without a trace of Sheldon peeking through. Then came 2022's Spoiler Alert, based on Michael Ausiello's memoir, a heartfelt, funny, and deeply emotional story about love, loss, and living fully. This project was special for Jim, not just because he starred in it, but because he produced it through his company, That's Wonderful Productions. That's right, he's not just in front of the camera anymore, he's behind it, making decisions about what stories get told, who gets cast, and how the film comes together. For Jim, producing isn't just about creative control. It's about championing the kind of stories he wants to see in the world. And in this case, that meant telling a modern gay love story that was authentic, moving, and refreshingly free of cliches. And speaking of That's Wonderful Productions, Jim's been steadily building that side of his career. He and Todd have been partners in life and in business, developing projects for TV, film, and stage. Some are comedies, some are dramas, but all have that Parsons touch, thoughtful, well-crafted, and a little bit unexpected. Of course, Jim hasn't forgotten his first love, theater. He's returned to the stage multiple times since The Big Bang Theory, taking on roles that push him in completely different directions. On stage, there's no safety net. No cut, let's try that again. Just you, the script, and a live audience that reacts in real time. Jim has said in interviews that theater keeps him honest as an actor. It forces you to be fully present, every single second. And here's something you might not know. He's also lent his voice to animated projects, from Home, the DreamWorks movie, to narrating young Sheldon. That last one's a fun twist, right? The man who played Sheldon for over a decade now, serving as the narrator for the character's childhood. It's like a little Easter egg for fans, and it shows Jim's willingness to have fun with his own legacy. What all of this proves is that Jim Parsons isn't afraid of reinvention. He could have stayed in the comfort zone forever, big paychecks, easy recognition, but he chose to explore. He chose to surprise people. And maybe, most importantly, he chose to surprise himself. So if you thought Jim Parsons was going to fade quietly into former sitcom star territory, yeah, think again. He's out here making bold choices, telling different kinds of stories, and proving that life after a mega hit can be just as exciting, if not more. And honestly, watching him take these chances feels a little like watching a friend reinvent themselves. You're rooting for them, you're curious, and you can't help but think, okay, what's he gonna do next? But maybe that's the real legacy of Jim Parsons. It's not just the roles he's played, it's the way he's lived them. From a kid in Houston putting on living room plays for anyone who'd watch, to a theater student grinding through endless rehearsals, to a sitcom star whose face is recognized in dozens of countries, Jim's journey is proof that success doesn't have to mean losing yourself. If anything, for Jim, the bigger the spotlight got, the more important it became to stay true to who he was. Think about it. He built a career on a character who celebrated being different, and then turned around and lived his own life with that same unapologetic individuality. That's rare. Hollywood is full of people who change themselves to fit the next big role, the next PR strategy, the next market trend. Jim did the opposite. He leaned into his truth, both on and off screen, and the world didn't just accept it, they embraced it. And here's where it gets powerful. For some people watching The Big Bang Theory, Sheldon Cooper might have been the first time they saw someone proudly different, someone who didn't try to blend in. For others, Jim Parsons himself might be the first openly gay actor they've looked up to. Representation matters, not because it checks a diversity box, but because it tells someone sitting on their couch at home, hey, you're not weird for being you, you're just you, and that's enough. Over the years, Jim has shown that you can take the fame you've earned and turn it into something bigger than yourself. He's done it by supporting organizations that save lives, by telling stories that honor real history, even when it's uncomfortable, by producing projects that put marginalized voices front and center. And here's the thing, he does it without turning it into a self-congratulatory brand. No endless hashtags, no look at me campaigns, just steady, consistent action. That's the kind of influence that lasts. And let's be honest, staying authentic in Hollywood is no small feat. This is an industry where trends change faster than you can refresh your feed, where there's always a new it person, a new formula for success. But Jim's approach has been simple. Keep choosing projects that matter, keep surrounding yourself with people who bring out the best in you, and keep showing up in the world as exactly who you are. That's not just a career strategy, that's a life philosophy. Now, not everyone will be a world-famous actor. Not everyone will win 4 consecutive Emmys or have a catchphrase on t-shirts around the globe. But here's what everyone can do. Commit to what you love. Be yourself, even when it feels easier to be someone else. Treat people with kindness. Use whatever platform you have, big or small, to make life a little better for someone else. Because when you strip away the awards, the scripts, the red carpets, Jim Parsons' story isn't about Hollywood. It's about authenticity. It's about showing up for your life exactly as you are. It's about finding your version of that spot on the couch where you feel completely at home, and not letting anyone tell you you don't deserve to sit there. And maybe that's the best kind of inspiration, the kind that doesn't just entertain you for half an hour, but nudges you to think, if he can live his truth, maybe I can too. Imagine the ripple effect if everyone took that approach. Whole communities would change. People would walk into rooms a little taller. Kids would grow up seeing examples of success that look like them, love like them, dream like them. So whether you first met Jim Parsons through Sheldon's perfectly timed sarcasm, saw him break your heart in the normal heart, or simply admire the quiet way he holds Todd's hand at a public event, his story leaves you with one clear message. Different is not less. And in a world that sometimes pushes people to shrink, to hide, or to tone it down, Jim Parsons is living proof that you can throw all of that out, take up your full space, and still build something extraordinary. And maybe, just maybe, that's the legacy that will outlive any TV rerun or award. Because at the end of the day, it's not about the size of your audience, it's about the honesty of your story. And Jim Parsons' story? It's one worth telling, worth hearing, and worth carrying with you long after the credits roll. You don't need to be a genius physicist or have a perfectly labeled spot on the couch to change the world. You just need the courage to be exactly who you are. Jim's story reminds us that sometimes the bravest thing isn't facing a camera, it's facing your own truth and saying, quietly but firmly, this is me. If today you feel too different, too quiet, too odd to belong, hold on to this. The thing that sets you apart may be the doorway where the light comes in. Jim didn't bend himself to fit a mold. He chose honesty, and the light found him. You can choose that too. Gently, consistently, one step at a time. If this story made you smile, made you think, or tugged at a place in your heart because you saw yourself in it, please like the video, subscribe, and share it with someone who needs to hear that being different isn't a flaw. Your one click today might be the lifeline someone far away has been waiting for. Before you go, give yourself a moment. Sit in your own spot on the couch, the place where you feel most safe, most whole, Most you. Memorize that feeling. Carry it with you when you step back into the noise of the world. I'll see you in the next video. Go live a little bigger, not to fit someone else's script, but to fit your own heartbeat. And remember, different isn't less. It's your superpower.